So what's going on, Sundance City?
Yep. Andy, I'm doing, man, nothing a whole lot. We're just hanging out, relaxing.
Oh, good, man. So how's your week and all that been going?
Well, the week's been good, so we're off tomorrow. I think that I mentioned this probably a week or so ago, but I'm off tomorrow, so there's a little kid at church. He's like two, man. That kid is awesome. And when I was deployed, for my birthday, they gave me like a remote controlled tractor.
Right.
So I gave it to him for Christmas, and he loves it, man. He's doing all that stuff. So I'm going to go get him tomorrow. We got a couple of guys deploying. I'm going to go see them, and then I'm going to go get him, and then I'm going to put him on a real life dozer and let him operate.
Oh, yeah. You told me about that. That's pretty
cool. I'm excited about it.
Dude, that's awesome, man.
He's good stuff.
That's awesome. Well, you want to jump in and finish our conversation on craft spirits, craft bourbon. So you want to continue building that bar?
Let's do it.
So last week we started kind of the conversation of putting some craft spirits, craft bourbon on our bar. And we had started, you asked me a few questions. I know it's Maverick trying to get his 2 cents in.
Real quick, is it messing this up?
It is not messing it up.
Okay.
He's fine. He's just being Maverick. So let's continue this conversation as to why we should consider craft. And I'm just calling it bourbon because what I used for last week was Neely Family Distillery, single barrel strength. So what as far as craft is concerned, and we talked a little bit last week about everybody has craft around them. Talk about what you brought today.
So before I get into what I brought, I do want to talk about the distillery that I brought it from, because you made a perfect point. We're talking about craft bourbon. And the reason we're talking about craft bourbon is because bourbon is my drink of choice. I will choose bourbon. The only thing that I will not choose bourbon over is coffee. Other than that, my drink of choice has been and always will be bourbon. However, dude, they've got craft cognac, craft rum, craft gins. So for the listeners out there that may or may not be a bourbon fan, they may like gin or tequila or whatever. There's craft spirits or even craft beer.
Right.
But for sake of argument, you're right. So ours is craft bourbon. What I'm bringing to the table, and this is, again, I will reiterate, just like you did, I am not recommending this specific brand. However, this is the first brand or the first legal distillery in Arkansas. And so this is Rocktown. I've actually got two bottles here. One is peated and one is a 4-grain sour mash. And we'll kind of get into what some of that means later on. But what I have right now is Rocktown's single barrel cask strength. Cask meaning whatever proof they put into the bottle is what you get. This one happens to be 110. They had some that were 108, 112. So I got this, and so it's a 4-grain sour mash single barrel that I got from our local craft distillery here in Arkansas.
All right, man. Well, I'll drink to that.
As will I.
Okay, so when we decided to do our episodes on craft, and we kind of thought that this is a bigger topic than, say, just each picking a bottle. This was a bigger discussion that we should have on craft altogether. So when we thought about this, I came up with some questions. You came up with some questions. So last week we dealt with my questions. Let's deal with your questions about craft. And some of them might kind of overlap what we talked about last week, but that's fine.
Sure.
We're just helping to try to tell the story the best that we can of craft. So the first question I have is, what's the difference between craft bourbon and regular flagship bourbon?
So the difference is, and I kind of did some research on this because I know that everybody has their own definition of what craft is. I mean, you can do craft woodworking, craft guitars, craft whatever. And so what I want to hit on is that craft bourbon is usually made by a smaller distillery or kind of like a single distillery. I'm not going to say that it's a bottled and bond type thing, but it's typically a smaller distillery. As an example, and I probably won't use names, but I've got a friend of mine that owns a distillery up in Missouri, and his stills and the distillery is a lot smaller, super fine product, but it's a lot smaller than what you would get at, say, Jack Daniel's. And so I think that craft bourbon or craft spirits in general is usually a smaller distillery, right? So they're able to do the things that maybe financially the bigger ones can't.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. That makes perfect sense. So I know you asked me this question and I gave you my answer, but my question for you is, why should we put a craft bourbon on a bar?
Okay. I'm going to do my usual, because I'm a talker, right? Everything is a conversational piece.
No.
Hang on. You may be surprised.
No.
I'm a talker, and so everything is a conversational piece. So, and I think in our last podcast, I'd used the state, specifically Connecticut. I have a troop of mine that was in Altus, and I love him to death. Not Eddie Balfour. He's a goaltender in Dallas Stars. Akeem Balfour, one of my best friends. I love him to death. He's a great guy. Anyway, he's a train conductor in Connecticut. Now, in my earlier years, when I made rot gut whiskey, he was right there along, sipping with me with a half smile because he didn't want to hurt my feelings and all that stuff. But I use that as an example because if he were to come to my house right now and see the things that I have on the bar, some of that stuff he's going to recognize.
Mm-hmm.
But like Rocktown, for instance, he won't. And so it's a conversational piece. Well, what is this? Well, this is what this is. This is what Arkansas has to offer. And so he's going to go back home. And I know that not everybody has friends or family from out of state and this, that, and the other. But if they did, it would be a conversational piece. Okay, well, I really like this. This is very good. I like the taste profile. I like the viscosity of it. And this is local to Arkansas? Yeah, absolutely. And you've got one where you're from. You got one in Connecticut. Okay, so how do I find it? So go back to Connecticut and find your local craft distillery. Plug in, go and visit. And so it's a conversational piece. Secondly, depending on what state you're in, like here in Arkansas, we have a saying called drink local, right? It's almost a sense of pride. Now, I'm an Ole Miss fan. I'm a diehard Mississippi boy, but I love Arkansas. I will drink local because they make phenomenal beer, gin, bourbon, you name it. I will not say woo pig suey. That is not going to happen. However, the drink local thing, it's a pride thing because typically, and I say typically because I don't know how all the other states go, but I know here in Arkansas and in Missouri, this is what they do. The cooperage that makes the staves for the barrels come from here in Arkansas, just like the one in Missouri comes from Cuba, Missouri. Mm-hmm. Number two, the grains that you get to make said spirit come from local farmers in that state. Number three, I can't vouch for Rocktown specifically, but I know that in Missouri, whenever they're done, they take all the spent grains and they ship them back out to the farmers that they bought from to feed the cattle that come. So it's basically it's a family business. And that is one of the things that I love about craft bourbonship is the family vibe that you get, right? I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, dude. And I'll say this, whenever I travel, and I don't travel a whole lot for work, but there are specific times of the year, like the summer, for instance, for me, I do a whole lot of traveling for work. I go to different states for different things. And when I'm in those different states, I like to look up, the local distillery. I like to look up, and if I can't get to the distillery because I'm busy working, I'll at least try to get to a liquor store and get a bottle of local stuff.
Yep.
And recently, like I think August or something of last year, I had gone to Pennsylvania, and I was in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and there happens to be a distillery around Hershey, Pennsylvania. And so I was able to get a bottle of that. And man, I know you're gonna think like that you're just dumb or it's power of persuasion or whatever. But man, I brought that bottle home, and when I tasted that bottle, the first thing that hit me, like sometimes I'll taste a bottle and like, for instance, I was at Neely Family Distillery one day and I was helping Becca Sue taste through some barrels, and I tasted one immediately. It tasted like burnt orange. I mean, so much that you would think it was like an orange flavored bourbon, but it wasn't. So sometimes things will hit me like that. And I know you're going to think like this is you're dumb or power persuasion or whatever, but when I tasted it, the immediate first thing I thought, chocolate. It had the most chocolate flavor that I've ever. Now, does that mean, does it mean I'm stupid? No. I mean, it could be that, the terroir there is fit for that, but man, it was some good stuff. But yeah, like you said, I like to go and everywhere we go, I try to find like a bottle of something local there. So, I can bring it back. And I have a section on my bar at home. I have all my Kentucky bourbons, but I have a section of non-Kentucky bourbons. And I mean, I have stuff from Colorado, from, Pennsylvania, from Arkansas, from, where you name it. I have some bourbons from other states and from New York. I have stuff, Texas. I have stuff from all these. And to me, what makes them great is, Kentucky is known for being the bourbon capital of the world, but there's other, like when I was in Colorado this past summer filming for a film that I'm doing called Colorado Whiskey, these guys were like, we're not trying to taste like Kentucky bourbon. Nothing wrong with it. We love Kentucky bourbon. We're trying to taste like Colorado bourbon or Colorado single malt or whatever. So we're not trying to taste like that. So when you go to these different places, like you said, you go to Arkansas, you're going to taste an Arkansas bourbon. And, whatever that means, you'll be able to taste it, So yeah, I agree with everything you say.
I'm going to tell you this, and I won't get into too many specifics because whatever, but I was in Jordan for reasons back in 2019. And believe it or not, so Israel and Jordan, they border each other. Now, I have not been to Israel, but Israel does have, I've reached out, and they have bourbon distilleries in Israel. And they were like, Shalom, whenever you come in, please let us know, and we'll have a pour for you. But there was a distillery in Jordan that I thought was very, very good. The only thing that I can say, and I know that we're talking about crafts, and so I just kind of wanted to throw that story in there. They utilize a lot of European woods. Whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
I don't know what but nonetheless, that craft kind of pursued into that. And so, but that's a lot of the, more so than not, you get a lot of these craft they don't want to take the world over. They just want their little piece of the pie. And each one, to me, I'm with you, can be specifically like, I can taste different things from each one. Yeah. There's another distillery in Missouri that they do open fermentations outside because they want to capture Missouri. Not necessarily like the heritage behind it, but the taste profile.
Yeah.
There's a lot of lavender in Missouri. There's a lot of honey in Missouri and all that. And so these things kind of capture. And so, I mean, I think that's kind of cool.
Cool. All right. Well, let's talk about specifically talk about the specific bottles you brought and talk a little bit about some of the taste profiles and the things from those that you brought.
So I did want to mention the specific one that I brought. And the reason I did this was not to sell people on this brand, but to kind of let people know that these are some of the things that you're going to get from your local distillery. So as an example, to kind of give a little background about the distillery that I chose right here in Arkansas, there's another one called Delta. Delta, I can't remember the name of it. Delta something. Anyway, it's in Jonesboro, which is like 2.5 hours away. I would love to go see them. I just haven't yet. So Rocktown is in Little Rock, Arkansas. It's been around since 2010, was the first legal Distillery here. Great people there. They're good folks. And so we had gone there, you and I, to see them in 2017. And so what I chose from them is I chose, like I said, the single barrel cast strength bourbon. It's made with a mash bill of 73% corn, 9% rye, 9% wheat, 9% barley, malted barley, aged into a 25-gallon barrel for 24 months. The second one that I got talked into buying yesterday, which I'm glad that I did, is it's called a peated Arkansas straight bourbon whiskey. Basically, it's the Scotch of America. This is an American Scotch. Very good. But I chose these because I want people to say that you're in New York, or Washington, or Oregon, or whatever, and you've got a craft distillery there. It's probably, I mean, if we're being real, it's probably not going to be too far off of what you're dealing with in Kentucky and what I'm dealing with here in Arkansas. And so what I want to tell you is like for the first thing, this is 110 proof. This is a 4-grain cast strength. Again, it's aged for 24 months. And the smell that I've got here is a cherry wood smell. The front palate I get is a strong ethanol and cherry wood. Cherry wood is pretty predominant in this whole thing, and I don't know why. But the mid palate is kind of a caramel and a butter toffee. And the back palate is a finish of cherry and pecans and campfire. I know that sounds weird. And so I know that typically we wait to the last to get to the taste profile, but I want people to understand kind of what they're dealing with whenever they go into the craft bourbon. It is all, honestly, if we're going to talk about craft bourbons, the taste is all over the place. Mm-hmm. And the reason it's all over the place, you and I have talked about this in previous ones. I can have the exact same mash bill, same temperature, same time, same season, same everything. It is going to be completely different. You mentioned a burnt orange. I guarantee you that he made the exact same product in a different barrel, which was charred the same way, the whole nine, probably from the same tree. Mm-hmm. But it's not burnt orange.
Right.
And so I bring up the taste profile and what I've got because other people are going to experience different things because it's all over the place because it legitimately is what you get is what you get. And none of it's bad.
Mm-hmm. Well, dude, and that's one of the things that I love about what a lot of craft distilleries do. And last week we had talked about, I brought to the table Neely Family Distillery. And for those of you that know me and have followed my journey, one of the things that I like about what Neely Family Distillery does is they have, so Becca Sue is their single barrel coordinator. And not only does she pick out the barrels that say, you know, this barrel is good enough to be, you know, sold as it is, but they also do this thing where we've had this conversation probably before in other mediums, but they name the barrel. So what they do is they come up with a panel of people. So like me and you might be on the panel, she's on the panel, 2 or 3 others. And so we all taste these bourbons. So say they pick 5 barrels. They say we're out of all these barrels, one of them is going to be our next single barrel. So we all decide on one. And then we kind of all start writing down what we taste. So I taste in this, I taste, you know, vanilla, caramel, I taste whatever. Well, if you know me, you know my 100% favorite bottle of bourbon I've ever had is called Marshmallow Black Belt. And luckily I had drank my bottle and somebody sent me a couple bottles and I'm down to this. This is it. This is all I have of Marshmallow.
Oh no.
Yeah. But so it's my favorite because, you know, whether you want to agree that it's, you know, your mind, you know, you read that and you say, but you know, this barrel, just like, you know, the burnt orange, it has orange up front. This bottle to me is different than this bottle. And
yep.
And they name them different, but man, when you taste this, like immediately it tastes like almost like marshmallow flavored bourbon. And so it's my favorite, but here's the thing. This is also what I like about it. Once this liquid is gone, And to my knowledge, they have no more of it. Like, this is it. Like, and when this is gone, I will never, ever, ever, ever taste this again. Now, do these taste similar? Yes, they have a similar taste. Neely's stuff to me tastes kind of similar, but it's enough of a different profile from bottle to bottle, from barrel to barrel, that it's like I could tell what distillery it comes from, but it's just something different. So what I like about that is that, you know, when I find something that's great, I'm lucky to find it, and it's phenomenal, but I'm never going to taste it again. And I would even say, you know, not a knock on heritage brands or anything at all, but I've bought several bottles of, say, like Jim Beam single barrels or Four Roses single barrels, and it's their purpose in doing single barrels aren't what the craft distillers, what, you know, their reasoning for single barrels aren't necessarily the same. So I have another buddy in Indiana, Alan Bishop, and I've been to his place, and I've actually been there when he's laid out, say, 20 barrels, and we're going to taste through all these barrels, and we're looking for things that just stand out completely different. And when you're there, you taste, and it's like, this tastes good, this tastes good, this tastes good. And you're like, this one tastes good, but it's 100% different. Like, it's, in the industry, they call it off profile. So when it's on profile, these are the barrels you want to mix and make your flagship product with. But if something's off profile, you want to set it aside and be like, this is special, so it's going to be a special barrel. But the beauty of that is, you know, these smaller craft, they can really kind of hone in on those, and they can, you know, you find those and you're like, God, I'm so glad that I have this bottle. But the downside is, once it's gone, it's gone. You're never going to taste it again. And so, but that's, to me, that's what kind of keeps me in the game. So,
you know, I got Carly yesterday. I went and got her, and on our way back home. So yesterday was Kinsley's birthday, my youngest. And so Courtney had her, they were doing like this, it's called Fired Up. They went and painted ceramics and did their whole thing. And Carter was playing laser tag. And so it was just me. And I was like, you know what? So I went to go get Carly, and I went to stop by and do all this, and had a pour, and I bought these bottles, and she asked me, which I love whenever they do this, because I'm like, I got a reason to talk about this now. So when you pull up to this specific rock town, they changed places from where you and I went. They're like in a different building now. So when you pull up in the parking lot, they've got these ventilated areas, and that's the barrel house. And then you walk into like the main place, and it's a bar. It's a bar / restaurant. That's the tasting room now. So I walk in there. Carly goes, Dad, it smells so good in here. And I'm like, save that, because I'll explain that whenever we leave. Anyway, had our drinks, I had my drink. And then we left. So she was like, Dad, why are they like, what's the rings around the barrels, and she had all these questions. I was explaining to her that, you know, you and I had mentioned this in one of our other podcasts, our grain to stained glass, about the single barrel. There's something about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was explaining to her, like, you know, the angel share is the smell that you smell when you walk in there, and this is the product, you know, people go through and they taste it. And I said, but there's this one barrel that whenever they taste it, they're like, there's something different about it. And I say that because I do want to lead into Neely family. For Christmas last year, 2 years ago, you got me 2 bottles. You got me a marshmallow black belt and a honeysuckle rose. And I know that people could say, well, of course you're tasting honeysuckle, you know, or marshmallow, because it says it in the thing. But what I will say is this: the honeysuckle rose tasted like honey to me, just as the marshmallow black belt tasted like marshmallow. But when I went out there to see you, I got a generic bottle and was able to bottle it myself and name it what I wanted. And I can't remember what I named it, but as I tasted it, that's what I named it. Mm-hmm. And so I do understand why they do what they do.
Right.
when it's named marshmallow black belt, it's because it tastes like marshmallows. Or
and
s'mores
chances are it's not one person doing it and saying, "Oh, here's what I taste." It's a panel of people, and they put all their notes down.
right.
Go, okay, everybody here says it tastes like marshmallow. Everybody here says it tastes like honeysuckle or whatever. So
And that's what they go by.
So that, I mean, so that all that kind of speaks to like the specific, kind of complexity and things to these,
to each state.
and that's what I do find when of course I'm a little different now that I live in Kentucky. When I have family come up or friends come up and they're like, show me what I have to have, and it's like, you know what, I could do all this, but try this. This is from a craft distiller right down the road, or try this. This is something I picked up in Pennsylvania, or, I picked this up in Colorado. And so, I do like sharing, even if it's not Kentucky wide. Maybe it's like, man, when I was in Colorado, I tried this and you've got to try this. This is essential Colorado right here in a bottle or whatever.
Yeah.
So I get that because, when people look through my bar at home and they're like, okay, I see a lot of stuff here, but what should I try? I always try to find something craft or, from it would still be craft, but from another state or something to say, look, try this versus something you're used to. Cause, they'll say, well, what should I try? I'm generally a Jim Beam drinker. I'm generally a Maker's Mark drinker or whatever. It's like, okay, well here, let's try some of this,
Yep.
Gonna be different, but I think, it's time to show you kind of the differences.
Sure.
All right. So that leads to my final question is your personal preference. Do you prefer craft over heritage?
So even though this question is part of our thing, I think it's a loaded one, and I'm going to answer this honestly, and I do not mean to make anybody. This is my personal preference. I do like craft over, and here's why. And I say yes, it's kind of a yes and no thing. So the heritage is phenomenal because this is what they do for a living. I mean, this is what they do day in and day out. Okay. This is what they built their life around. This is kind of this is their jam. And they do a fine job at it. The Jack Daniels, the Wild Turkey, Jim Beam, this is what they do. However, I enjoy craft bourbon on the simple fact that it's, owned, operated, taste profile, and not just here. I like the craft because it's different, dude. Like as an example, man, if I'm craft bourboning in Mississippi, Hottie Toddy or Hell Safe, and it's got that in it. I'm up here, and unfortunately, we say woo pig suey, and so we're doing all that. In Alabama, there's a craft distiller in Alabama that's saying Rama Jamma Yellow Hammer. It's a part of life. You know what I mean? Craft has that life in it, and so I know that so as an example, when I deployed this last time, I got stuck in Virginia for 5 days. And I had some of their local stuff. And the people were so proud of it.
Yeah.
Very good. I mean, I could taste different profiles and all that stuff, but I could just taste this is a piece of Virginia. You know what I mean? Of course, up there, their big thing is like George MacArthur and all that stuff. But I mean, you could taste history in it. And so I don't want to say yes that I like craft more than the heritage because heritage does a fine job. They truly do. But I do have to say that I have a special place in my heart for the craft because, dude, if I go to New Mexico, I know that when I go to a craft distillery, I'm tasting New Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
I know that when I go to Oklahoma, I'm tasting Oklahoma. And so that, I guess, is what I'm trying to convey. It's that just I guess the equivalent would be, do you like NFL or college football? Well, college football, I mean, NFL guys are great at what they do. Don't get me wrong. But there's so much pride in each individual state and college football That's kind of where I'm at. Does that make any sense at all?
And to some degree, and I'm not saying this is an overall statement, but in some degree, if you're using the college versus NFL, to some degree, the college guys have way more to prove than the NFL.
Absolutely.
They've already made it, and they're making their millions. And the college guys have more to prove. And I'm not saying that craft is like the underdog and they're just second rate or anything like that. But
sure,
a lot of times they have more to prove, and they have more to kind of, they do have a bigger story that they have to tell, because, you have to sit there and go, if you look at I'm not saying anybody specific, but somebody's like, my grandfather he's drank nothing but Old Crow his entire life. Well, how are you going to sell that guy on something craft? It's, you know what I mean? So they have a lot more to prove than the heritage brand. So I get what you're saying with that.
They do have a lot more to prove. Here's the thing, though, and I will argue this with anybody, because I do understand, like, there used to be an old hard root beer that was like, not your grandfather's root beer and blah, blah, blah. And I get it. I do get it. So fortunately enough, your great-grandfather and my great-grandfather, Saul Hinton, he was a drinker, man. And I think that's where we get our love for this stuff. But he was always a bourbon guy and a brandy guy. Now, we know that back in his time frame, because he was born in 1914. So we know that in his time frame, there was a specifics. I would argue with any person walking the planet right now that if Pawpaw Hinton was alive today, he would thoroughly enjoy each and every craft bourbon.
Sure.
Because of what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because he wasn't just one that I'm going to go out and drink just to beat my wife and kick my dog. But I love the taste of it. And I think that Pawpaw York, Mama's dad, he was a drinker. They loved the taste of this stuff. And I guarantee you that it wasn't just, that I will not drink anything other than this. I think that they would those two specifically would be like, I think I can get into this because the pride and the taste.
Mm-hmm.
So, now I got a question for you.
And we got 3 minutes.
I know we got 3 minutes. I'll make it quick. Do your glasses make you feel more smart or what?
No, but they make me feel like I could see better. Because the older that I get, the more that I can't see well.
Yeah.
And so
okay. I just wasn't sure.
These bad boys here are not a fashion statement. These bad
just
boys
like
here are very functional.
Y'all got the colics. Oh, that's funny.
All right.
So we agree craft should be on the bar.
On the bar. Yep. And it doesn't matter. We're not saying that it has to be Neely Family Distillery. It doesn't have to be Rocktown. Go to your local, the closest thing you can find, and it doesn't even have to be bourbon. If your local craft distillery is a gin distillery or a vodka distillery, go see what they got and throw some local stuff on your bar.
Support your local distillery, huh?
Yeah. Yep.
Here, here.
Here, here, man. So we barely made it.
Yeah, barely.
I think we made a good case for craft.
I'm a talker.
You're a talker, dog liquor, and I love you, and I'm glad we got this out. And then next week we'll catch up with some more bottles that we need to add to this bar.
I'm down.
All right, man. I love you, buddy.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.
If you like what you heard tonight, check us out on these social media platforms. Just search for My Journey Through the American Spirits. Also, check us out on our new website,